is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fleabag, Season 2, Episode 3. In this episode, an anxiety dream becomes a reality for Fleabag when she drops a giant sculpted glass award and has to come up with a suitable replacement in under 10 minutes? I don't know. And it's exactly what I expected it to be, and it's terrible. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Rachel for commissioning this episode. Hey, Rachel, if you're out there. So this episode was really good, you guys. I just enjoyed this one a lot. It's remarkable. We have this confrontation by the end of this between Claire and Fleabag that it is funny in its way, because the whole thing is about how Claire feels like she's a failure in comparison to her very witty, funny, engaging, quirky sister. And it's amazing in comparison to last season, when Fleabag did not have her shit together in any way and was sort of the embarrassment of the family, was the vibe that you got. And she certainly felt like a failure in comparison to her sister, because she was needing to borrow money to keep her failing business afloat for a little bit longer. And I really love this sudden twist of it being that Claire feels self-conscious about her success. And I love Claire has an apartment, or an office. that was a slip that makes sense, though. She has an office that is, frankly, the size of Fleabag's entire apartment, probably. It is huge. I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that office is about the size of my entire living room and kitchen and bedroom, one bedroom. Maybe bigger. It's so enormous that the fact that it's one office is a little bit insulting, that it wasn't split into two, you know? And she's standing in the midst of this, making, 6 figures a year, perhaps more. I think actually more. Didn't Fleabag say, would you be a millionaire if you got this job? And she says, no. And then she sort of is well, yeah, technically. So she's making just the kind of money that is out of reach or consideration for most of us. And most people in this position would really feel like they made it. And it's extremely fascinating to me that Claire does not feel that way. And I am full of questions, because the main thing is that, like I said, the fact that Fleabag is funny and charming and engaging is part of what makes her feel so self-conscious. Fleabag puts a joke in her head that she winds up sort of using when she's giving her speech. And she feels really weird about it. It's this amazing moment. And I'm going to jump around a lot, so just be prepared for that. But when Fleabag comes back at the end of the episode, after having a drink with the award winner, Claire is acting really happy. And this is what tips Fleabag off to the fact that she's furious. And honestly, I was well, maybe she's wrong, because there are times where Fleabag thinks she knows her sister so well and predicts what she's going to do, and then she doesn't do that. So I was maybe she isn't right about this time. And honestly, a lot of that was coming from the perspective for me of like, I think that she definitely has a crush on that dude, which is what I sort of like predicted might be a thing. And maybe they had quite a night and she's sort of like buzzing, you know, like she's got a bit of a glow from the flirting. But it turns out Fleabag is correct. She's angry and feels undermined. And when she's talking to Fleabag in the elevator on the way up, she says all of these things. And at the time, I thought it was that she was worried Fleabag was going to embarrass her. And instead, what we wind up finding out is that she doesn't want to be outshined. It's almost worse. You know, like if you think that somebody is going to be embarrassed of you, you can at least put that down to them being like a little bit shitty, you know, having their perspectives messed up. And you can just be like, oh, well, if I embarrass you because I'm being myself, then maybe you're kind of shitty. And you can just sort of like let it roll off your back a little bit. But if somebody is worried about being outshined by you, that's a lot harder to cope with, at least for me. I had this issue with somebody that I had thought was like a best friend when I was in high school. And I've talked about this before, but basically there was a point where I was seeing a lot of success, and she basically told me that she didn't want me to succeed anymore because she thought I had like won enough, that I had, you know, and just made me feel like she really resented that I was doing well. And especially coming from where I come from versus her, she came from sort of like a privileged background, much more upper middle class. And I felt like she had a lot of advantages that I didn't. And somehow I was just managing to like even the playing field in my mind because I had talents in certain areas that she either didn't have, or she didn't have as much as me, or wasn't tapping into it yet. And so I felt like we were sort of like even. And then when she came out and made it clear that she felt like, I asked her to pray for me to win this contest because you got a cash prize. And I was trying to save up money to buy a sewing machine because I wanted to go to costuming school. And she said straight up, no, I'm not going to pray for you. I think you've won enough. And I remember being so startled at how vehement she was when she said it. It was clearly a moment of her saying something she'd been thinking and feeling for a long time. And it just came across very much that way. Like she had been sitting on this emotion and finally blurted it out. And what killed me was that I was at a table with another friend who nodded in agreement with her. And I was just so startled to realize that like my friends weren't happy for me. And it's just the sort of thing that like now looking back, I realize it's very easy to be like, well, then they weren't your friends. But in high school is a time where people are trying to figure out who they are. And she and I, unfortunately, we really both were interested in a lot of the same things. And everything that she was trying, I was beating her, basically. So, and it's not even necessarily that I was better. Like I said, I might have just been tapping into some abilities a little earlier than her, and it just looked like... But I won't lie, from that moment, I became very aware of not wanting to be a threat to people because I felt like that would make me less likable. And I struggled with that for a long time. Just always wanting to make myself a little bit less because I didn't want people to think that I was either like high on myself or that like I was stealing something from them. And it's like, I feel like I've gotten over that for the most part, but there are times where I still see it leaking out, where I still realize like, oh, I'm doing the thing. And it can be really a bummer to feel like someone doesn't want all of you because it threatens their view of who they are. There comes a point where you have to be like, that's your business. I'm going to be who I am. And there's a difference between I'm going to be who I am and I'm not going to give a fuck about your feelings. Those are not necessarily the same thing. A lot of people try to pretend they are, but they're not. That said, it can be really difficult when you just are by default kind of a lot. And that's me. I talk a lot. I'm opinionated. I have exaggerated reactions to things, both in my face and in the way that I speak. And just that's always, and it's just really, I just really felt for Fleabag in this moment when she is being told to just alter everything about herself. I'm going to read what Claire says. Just don't talk too much or try to pretend you know anything about the company, and don't be funny or clever, or just don't be the center of attention. These people are very important to me, so just don't be yourself. And that whole thing with the don't be clever or funny. It's how she's saying I'm funny later on, she's arguing about how I have my own jokes. And again, it's really easy to be like, well, maybe you don't. You want to write her off. But there is something to be said for being around certain people, causing you to sort of clam up or panic a little bit. I don't have this personally as much because I didn't grow up with a lot of siblings and I didn't have a super close-knit family. I really was around my mom and dad and my grandmother, and that's pretty much it. And now two of the three are dead. Not as much of an issue anymore. But I know for friends of mine who have siblings, this can be a big thing where they're like, I can be cool and funny and chill when I'm around friends and certain family members. But once I get around this part of my family, I turn back into this awkward 17-year-old that I don't even recognize anymore. And I don't know what happens. It's just this thing. And so I wonder if that's sort of what's happening with Claire. If it's because we saw how she reacted when Fleabag was volunteered to make the canapes last episode. She clearly didn't really want Fleabag to be the one. And I think maybe she's aware that this happens a little bit, that she does perhaps freeze up or clam up a bit. And it's not necessarily even Fleabag's fault that this happens, but that is a factor. So, it's I don't know. I have very complicated feelings about this whole thing. And like I said, I still struggle with it. And it's the kind of thing that I know especially when it's something that's so nebulous, like being funny. How do you quantify that you're as funny as somebody else? The number of times people laugh out loud at a joke, I guess? You keep track of that, which Claire 100% would keep track of that. She's somebody who would have a scorecard in her head and she'd be like, well, I made them laugh 3 times and she only got 2. Rachel says, I don't find this issue among guys. That patriarchy sure makes women feel like there isn't enough glory to go around. Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said, too, for, like I said, in high school, there literally isn't. There are awards that one person can win. There are parts in plays that one person can get. So you actually are taking something away from somebody else, if you want to break it down like that. It's a genuine thing. But when it's something like this, it's just so much more vague and strange and harder to quantify and harder to express your concern about without feeling really petty. And the whole don't be the center of attention thing. This is something that came up in Sex Education, which I'm covering also. And there's a whole thing there where these two characters get into a fight and one accuses the other of being attention seeking. And I used to really feel bad about being accused of being attention seeking. It used to be something that it's always shorthand for sort of being a little bit pathetic, like always needing people to validate you. And the thing is that sometimes you just get attention as a byproduct of what you're like. And people think that that's your goal. And then there's times where it's like, yeah, I want attention. So? Like, literally, so what? And I have this in both ways. The character in Sex Education dresses really flamboyantly. Bright colors, glittery makeup, turbans, the whole thing. And I have been that person a lot in my life where I dressed really loudly because I loved those clothes. It was not about, I want somebody to come up and compliment me. It was genuinely like, this looks good. I'm wearing this purely because I liked it. But then there have been times where I'm like, oh yeah, I want every guy in this club looking at me, and some of the women. Like, that's also valid. Wanting attention is something that we've really stigmatized as being a low ambition. And I reject that. Wanting attention is not an inherently bad or shameful thing. And I really hate that, we've got this whole industry around making yourself beautiful and noticed, but you have to simultaneously reject the attention that you have worked hard for. No, I took an hour and a half to beat my face like this. Yeah, I want people to notice it. I took, 40 minutes blowing out my hair. I got this sick outfit with these amazing shoes. Yes, I would like somebody to notice and acknowledge that. There's nothing wrong with it. So I have a very complicated relationship with this whole thing. Juliet says, I feel like I can relate to both Claire and Fleabag. Growing up fat, I had to develop my personality and humor pretty quick, so I was popular as a result. I know some of my friends felt overshadowed by me, but on the other hand, my best friend was beautiful, and it was horrible when I suddenly became invisible at clubs and parties because everyone was looking at her. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too, the concept of having to compensate because you're heavy. Because I was thin in high school and I didn't think I was. So I compensated without really quote needing to, because I had a messed up self-image and thought I had to make up for my body. And then, you get to, looking back now, I'm just like, oh, sweetie, oh my God. But I think that was part of the deal with my friend that said that thing to me in high school, was that she felt like I was overshadowing her already because I was prettier than she was. And so for me to continue to overshadow regarding my performance in art or musical theater or whatever was just sort of insult to injury, let me have this. And it's the kind of thing where it's I don't want to make you feel bad, but I also don't want to make myself less. That's not fair either. And that's where you get into this weird place where shit isn't fair. And I've said before on one of the Mistborn podcasts about how I fully admit that having talent, people like to treat it as if it's some sort of accomplishment, but I didn't work for the talent that I have. It's just something that I was either born with or developed very early that I don't really have a lot of control over and didn't earn necessarily. So that aspect of it not being fair, I genuinely mean it. It's not fair. There are people out there who have worked harder at things than me and didn't get as good at them as I did for no good reason. Just because I happen to have an ability and I don't, so I can definitely understand feeling a way about that as well. That you're working really hard and somebody else just walks in and has this innate talent. And it's just well, what the fuck, and there's no, there's nothing to be said about that. It's just fucking unfair sometimes and really stupid when it's something that they're really good at and they also don't really care that much. And so they're going to leave that by the wayside. And when I went to boarding school for my senior year, I came back to visit my school one last time before graduation. And one of my, actually, no, two teachers, the chorus teacher and one of my art teachers said, you know, ever since you've left, I hate to say this, but she's really blossomed. I think not being in your shadow really helped her. Like, two different teachers told me that. And it was just like reinforcing this whole insecurity that I had, weirdly, of just like being who I am makes my friends feel bad kind of thing. It was a weird place to be where I already felt that. She had directly said that to me. And then finding out that like other people noticed and thought the same thing from the outside, you know, just life is fraught is what I'm saying. It's just a mess. So yeah, she goes into, and she says something about how like, I don't make a comment about my office, I think, as they're heading in. God, this is so stressful. And Fleabag says, she's so happy. So yeah, she walks in, there's literally a couch, 2 armchairs, a coffee table, a huge wall of windows looking down over London, a desk that's like the size of probably a dining table that would seat easily 10 people. It's bonkers. And everything that she goes to do, Claire is like, put those down, don't put them there. Set this down, don't sit there. Like everything she goes to do, Fleabag goes to do, Claire stops her and is like, no, not like that. And it turns out that the statue that she's presenting with, she says it's worth thousands. And I'm so curious as to why. Like, was it like an artist that made it for her or something? I just want to know where exactly the value comes from with it. Because it just, to me, like, it's just, you know, it's glass, I would assume. I don't know. And there's this amazing moment where she thanks Fleabag and she's so awkward. And it's sort of beautiful in its way because it just really reminds me of what their dad's like. How he doesn't finish sentences and doesn't know how to handle, like, expressing positive emotions. You guys don't know how much I relate to that. It's such a shame. I'm getting better, and I really am working on it, but oh my God, it is so hard for me to be sincere and positive. I just don't do well, man. And when I do, I feel like it comes across extra weird because they can tell how hard I'm trying. Ugh, it's just really bad. I hate it. So she tells Fleabag, don't play with that. And Fleabag, literally the instant her back is turned, pulls the statue out, which she says looks like a giant sperm, and she's not wrong. And she drops it on the coffee table and shatters it into 1 trillion pieces. I'll tell you what, guys. I knew, like, in my heart, that's what was going to happen. It did not prevent me from gasping in horror when it happened, though. I genuinely was just like, oh my God. Like, it just, my insides shriveled up. Oh, it's the worst. And like I said in the intro, it's like an anxiety dream. You know, this is the kind of shit where in an anxiety dream, what would happen is you would know that there was a spare statue somewhere that you could go get that was like identical, but you couldn't find it. So you'd spend the whole dream searching for it, waiting for somebody to notice, or the time is running out and the award, you know, it's coming up to present it. And you would just spend the whole dream searching for it. I have had so many dreams like that. Anxiety. I'm just so jealous of people who don't dream. And there was actually a pretty interesting thread. Those of you who are in the Smash Fiction fan faction, Smash Fiction's a podcast that my co-host Miles was on, and with a bunch of people and rotating guests. And their Facebook group is really fun. And Megan Bob posted a thread starter one day that was like, if you could add a patch to the human body to improve something about it, what would you add? And I, of course, said I would like to stop peeing because it's very inconvenient. But Miles said, what's the deal with dreaming? that's like a complete waste of energy and mental space and time. It just like drains you. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a good one. Dreaming is one of the like bigger drains on my energy, both in my sleep, but also my mental energy when I wake up, because I'll just be preoccupied with what I was dreaming about. And I have like a full fucking musical score that happens, and or like original music. I'm not kidding. That I will wake up with in my head. If I could write it down, it would be so interesting to see over the years, because I can't write music, and I didn't used to have access to like recording stuff easily. So I have no like record of the stuff that I came up with, but this sort of anxiety dream is probably 60% of what my dreams are. Is just, I need to accomplish something. It's an emergency and I can't do it. So I fucking hated this part. And I was so relieved that it doesn't take up the whole episode. And I love when she goes sprinting out to find a replacement. And I knew it was going to be that statue. But she goes out and she passes this really hot guy and has to stop and be like, oh my God. Like she checks it. She can't help it. He's just that fine. So she comes back. We never find out until it's time to present the award what's in the box. But I knew for sure what it was going to be. And I'm pretty sure most people figured that out. So then we have, first of all, she tells a woman that there is no shellfish in the fucking like canapé, which there is. And later on, that woman is vomiting violently into the toilet. Yo, that's the kind of shit that can get you sued, girl. What are you doing? Why wouldn't you keep track of that? You know what you made, right? She says at one point to the other lady, like, oh, I stole them. And I was like, did you? Because I think she's lying. I think she's just joking. But there's a part of me, like, she went across to a store and went and bought like a frozen baklava or whatever the fuck it was that she was serving that one time. So, or it was risotto, wasn't it? So yeah, I don't like, maybe she did, but I feel like she's sort of not trying to be shady like that anymore. Juliet says, I dream a lot. I told my doctor I found my dreams exhausting, and he said that since I'm dreaming, I'm clearly having good quality sleep. Ew. Shut up, doctor. No. That's actually something that CBD has helped with a lot for me. When I take like 1 or 2 capsules around bedtime, I sleep and I don't dream as much. And I also don't wake up having to pee in the middle of the night. Because otherwise, I guaranteed I have to pee at like 3 a.m. But when I take CBD, doesn't happen. I can sleep through the whole night and I wake up having to pee. But I've slept through the night and it's really nice. Juliet, I need to get on that CBD, girl. Hit me up and I'll give you a link to a place with discounts. Because then I get a discount too. It's pretty good. So anyway, yeah, the mingling bit is really awkward because Claire is giving her so many mixed messages. And when Fleabag is being charming, she's telling her like, don't be attention seeking. This woman Belinda comes up and Claire tells Fleabag to not talk to Belinda. But then when Belinda asks her a direct question and she doesn't respond, Claire is like, say something. And it's just like, girl, come on, you know? And she says, no, I think they have courgette in them. And I'm like, this is what I'm saying, where I'm like, did you make these? Or no, because you think they have. And courgette, by the way, is zucchini. I had to look that up. I had no idea there was another name for zucchini. And I'm curious why. I'm always weirded out by finding out that something has a different name. Like, it's one thing for there to be synonyms of words that are just ideas. You know, like there's lots of synonyms for angry. It's an emotion that's got a lot of subtleties to it. Having varieties of words for that makes sense. But when there's just like an object, and it's like, oh yeah, we call it a zucchini, or you can call it a courgette, or I feel like there's another word for it, a third one. I'm going to see courgette. Courgette is the variety of cucurbit, which means it's from the same family as cucumber, squash, and melon. How about that? Baby marrow. That's the one. The zucchini, courgette, or baby marrow is a summer squash, a herbaceous vine. It is closely related but not identical to the marrow. See, okay, marrow's already something. That's inside bones. Okay? I don't see why we want to name a vegetable after a meat thing. I'm just saying, it's just confusing. What are we doing? Just pick a word and then that's what that is. The end. You know, it's fine. Let's see. Juliet says, in the UK, I believe we use the French names, whereas US uses Italian names. Courgette versus zucchini. We say aubergine instead of eggplant, etc. Yeah, and aubergine I always thought was only in reference to the color. I didn't realize that that was like the vegetable. And I resent that also. I don't know what y'all are trying to do, taking the French pronunciation for things. Like, make up your own then, England. And we'll take that, because Americans took everything from England. Well, we take everything from anybody, but, you know, like, for the most part, we try and copy the English a lot of the time. And that feels like it would have been a better solution. But no, we all had to pick different things. Just tiring. So yeah, this woman who plays Belinda, Kristen Scott Thomas, is that it? Yeah. Oh, she's so good. I really enjoyed her in this episode. So she really enjoys this, as we find out, this little taster. And this is when this dude, Claire, comes up to Claire. I do not know what to think. To be honest, if it weren't for her reaction to him, I would think he was gay. He still may be. She may just not have figured that out. I don't know. But I was sort of waiting to find out because, like you guys know, I said in the first episode, the way that she talked about this dude sounded to me like she was pretty into him. And so when I saw that we were going to be at her work, I was like, ooh, are we going to see this dude that she keeps like mentioning as being so good for the company? He is named Claire, and the reaction that Fleabag has when she hears that is so... you guys, her struggle to like not say anything, relatable. Y'all ever have that where like, you know that the way you're reacting is just making things worse, but you literally cannot contain the fucking like, whatever was about to come out of your mouth just lands on your face instead. And it's just like, you didn't say it, but you still said it and you can't take it back. And I had this happen. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm just remembering. Owen's grandmother, bless her soul, is still not aware that Owen isn't a Christian. She still hasn't like found out. And he doesn't want to tell them because he knows they're going to be so disappointed. And one time we were eating with her and they had just come home from church and she said, "You would have really liked today's sermon. It was about Revelations." And I just went, I didn't say anything, but I snorted, essentially, before I realized that she couldn't be joking. I just reacted like she was fucking with us. Because, in my opinion, that's the only reasonable reaction to hearing that you would love talking about fucking Revelations, the worst part of the Bible, bar none. Bar none. Just the worst part. Oh my God. And I couldn't take it back. It was just out. It was... And she like looked at me and I tried so hard to like fucking get it together and I felt so bad because I knew she didn't she doesn't get why that's funny because she doesn't fucking know anything about Owen anymore. But, oh God, you guys, I swear, it just came out. And so the fucking face she makes here, and this dude's like joking around about how I was vegetarian for 15 years. I thought it was a prune and it turned out to be a sausage and I ate it. It was just gone. Bang, bang. And Fleabag says something about how, like, yeah, we call them bangers actually. And he says, oh, that's funny. And Claire stares at her and says, yes, it certainly was. I'm like, girl, you need to fucking chill. So they both are talking about what a big fan they each are of the other's work. And he says, I'm going to go get a drink. Do you want anything? And Claire says, champagne, please. And he says, oh, off the wagon. And she says, just when I'm with you. And he walks away. And she shouts after him, let's go fucking crazy tonight. And he says, what? He was walking away. He turns around and comes back. And she, no, what did you say? And she says, I just said, let's go fuck like crazy tonight. No, she didn't. She said, let's go fucking crazy. Am I wrong, guys, that she said it wrong the second time? Or did I mishear it the first time? I'm almost positive she says it wrong the second time. I'm looking at it now and the fucking subtitles agree with me. The first time she says it, the subtitles say, let's go fucking crazy tonight. And the second time, it says, let's go fuck like crazy tonight. And he just goes, okay, and laughs and walks away. And I'm just like, and he like strokes her arm before he leaves. And this is when Fleabag is trying to hold it in. She's doing okay. It's not great, but she just says, oh my God. He's a very good businessman. He's just socially sort of So then finally, she just asks, what's his name? And you would really think that wouldn't be such a loaded question. And then when she says, Claire, I swear to God, you guys. Oh my God, this fucking show. What a genius move. Oh my God. Who thought of this? Who wrote this? Has this happened to somebody? This is like Jenna Mulroney who like falls in love with the dude who's doing drag of her. You know, like... Oh God. The way Fleabag just says, what? Oh my God. So she tells her to mingle. Don't talk to anyone. I'm not in love with him. In that order. And then she walks off. And there's this incredibly weird moment, you guys. So she's announcing the nominees. And she says, amongst our exceptional women, we have Georgina Franks. Applause, applause, applause. Belinda Frears, who winds up being the winner. And another extraordinary woman, Claire Corhonen. Oh, sorry, I think there's been a mistake here. She just said that because she was looking at him, right? Elizabeth Sawkin. And there's this woman, Elizabeth, in the background who raises a glass in acknowledgement. Later on, when the award is given to Belinda, this girl in the background just says something like, oh, for fuck's sake? Like really publicly being like, excuse me? That was my award. And on the one hand, I was like, bad form. And on the other hand, I was like, baller move. Like, just being really open with the fact that you are disgusted. You know what? I'm a little bit proud of her. Like, a little bit. So she's talking to Fleabag about how this is all going to go. When you hear me introducing Sylvia, it has to go like cockwork. Like what? Cockwork. Claire, your brain is somewhere else right now. So this is when she comes across, what's-her-face vomiting violently. I'm so excited to introduce Sylvia Hamber, and this year's winner of Women Who Work. And she's about to continue this when Fleabag has to be like, no, she's not coming up. She's sick. And Claire finally is just like, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it myself because she's busy, as you guys all must know. I'm trying to see the part where this woman does just blurt out, for fuck's sake. It's taking so long to get there because Claire is long-winded. Oh my God, the name of the business is Herbuts. What a weird name. Family really shouldn't touch each other up next to the photocopier. And I love Fleabag glancing at the camera and sort of being a little bit smug that she uses that same joke. And that winds up being what the problem is later. This year's best woman in business. Here it is. This is Belinda Frears. And then the woman, fuck's sake. And then just, begins applauding with just, it's so grudging. Honestly, I just find this so funny. And she gets the statue. Oh, God. So, she winds up being sent to follow the winner and get the statue back, which results in them going to a bar to talk over what all happened. I have to mention, Kristen Scott Thomas talks about how people don't flirt with her anymore in this, later on when she's talking about menopause. I don't buy it. All right, bitch. Look at you. Yeah, they do. You are a liar. Like, look, I'm certain that it's a different crowd than used to, perhaps. Nevertheless, bitch looks good, okay? That is like aging goals. She says something like she's like 54 or something. Where? And I'm aware that she's been freshened up. You know, fine. That's fine. Nevertheless, I really love this scene between the two of them. She says something like, when she's looking at the statue, Women's Awards. And when Fleabag congratulates her, she says it's infantilizing bollocks. It's ghettoizing. It's a subsection of success. And it's the fucking children's table of awards. I will not lie. I have often felt like this. It's not that it's not an accomplishment. It just feels patronizing. You know? It's like, and it is patronizing. The point of creating awards specifically for women is basically acknowledging that we are never going to get the acknowledgement we deserve in a regular setting. So we have to make our own thing, because otherwise y'all aren't going to give us credit for jack shit, which is so depressing, y'all. It really is. So yeah, this whole, like, when Fleabag is like, why did you go? And she says, because I'd be an asshole not to. Yeah, you know, like, you can't just reject it. You can't just be like, well, this is stupid and doesn't matter, even if you feel that way. Because you have to see that there's, like, a need for it to exist. You understand where they're coming from with creating something like this. But that doesn't make it any less insulting. You know, I felt her on that. I really did. And it's the kind of thing that I want it to have the opposite effect, where I want it to be like, oh, we see that a women's group awarded this to so-and-so. which means that we're going to take a look at her work because that's really like drawn attention to her. But I feel like the effect is always, oh, women awarded her this award, which means that her work is for women, which means that it's not for everyone, which means that it doesn't matter, is what I feel tends to happen. It causes someone to be more dismissed than otherwise sometimes, you know? It's such a shame. I fucking hate it. But patriarchy! Okay, so this is when she begins talking about, oh my God, I love when she says, what's your favorite period film? And Fleabag says, Carrie. That's so good. So they have a really nice little conversation here. They're having their little cocktails, which I swear to God, watching people have a martini. I don't like an olive. I like a twist. I don't understand olives. I just don't get it. But I wanted a martini so bad watching this. And there's this interesting thing here where, okay, she's 58. Bitch, shut up. And she tells her, don't worry, it gets better. And Fleabag says, you promise? And she says, I promise. Listen, I was on an airplane the other day and I realized, well, I mean, I've been longing to say this out loud. So, women are born with pain built in. Our physical destiny, period pains, sore boobs, childbirth. And then we carry it with ourselves throughout our whole lives, and men don't, and they have to seek it out and invent all these things, which I found really, it was a fascinating point. And then we have pain on a cycle for years and years and years, and just when we're making peace with it all, what happens? Menopause. The fucking menopause. And it is... And Fleabag interrupts because she's taking a long time to like finish the sentence. And she says, she's looking at her like and she says the most wonderful fucking thing in the world. And yes, your entire pelvic floor crumbles and you get fucking hot and no one cares, but then you're free. And Fleabag says something like, I've heard that it fucking sucks though. And she's like, whoa, no, it does. It does suck. But also, it's great. It's horrendous, but then it's magnificent. And this is sort of the exact vibe that I have gotten from women I've spoken to. Is like, so I don't know how many of you know this. Probably a lot of women are already aware. But when we are on our period, our hormone levels adjust. Or not even on our period, when we're premenstrual and we're moody and unpredictable and frustrating to be around, frustrating to be honest, our hormonal makeup during that time is closer to that of a man's than in any other time of the month. So basically, when we are insufferable is when we're the most like a dude in our makeup. And so when you reach menopause, a lot of women have this like threshold that disappears where they used to be able to put up with shit. And all of a sudden they can't do it anymore. They're like, no, that's not how I'm living. And this is part of why around that age, a lot of women split up from their partners because their personality changes. And their partner, who is used to being able to like get away with whatever bullshit, is shocked at how this woman that they are used to being able to walk all over won't tolerate that shit anymore. And I've read a lot about this and seen a lot about this firsthand, my mother, close friends. And it's the sort of thing that this is exactly what they say is basically it's super freeing, but also the physical toll of going through it is really shocking and kind of upsetting because when your estrogen levels go down, your hourglass shape begins to thicken and you become more of a barrel shape. Your full lips thin out. There's just a lot about an appearance that we like think of as feminine that is associated with higher estrogen levels. And so your femininity in your appearance begins to drop. And that is really hard for women to be okay with, you know, like I'm only 37 years old. Am I? 36 years old. And I'm already really noticing the difference in my face. Getting like jowl lines, my eyelids drooping, things like that. And this is just simple aging, gravity. But once my hormones begin to shift and that has an effect on how I look, that just feels unfair, you know? However, the freedom of not having to deal with the fucking reproductive shit anymore, it really, that was another aspect of that thread about like patching the human body. Somebody was like, I think it was Owen actually, said, I think reproductivity is something that should be opt-in instead of opt-out. I am not interested in having children. If it would be possible for me to completely shut that shit down so I don't even get a period anymore because I don't want kids, so what's the point? That would be great. But no, we have to go through this ridiculous fucking cycle. Whatever. It's just, the human body is poorly thought out, poorly designed, and in my opinion is evidence that intelligent design isn't real, but it's fine. So she's talking about nobody flirting with her anymore. And she says that Fleabag says something about how most people are shit. And she says, people are all we've got. Grab the night by its nipples and go and flirt with someone. And Fleabag leans forward and kisses her. And she says, that's not what I meant. And Fleabag looks at her and leans in and kisses her again. And she just lets her for a second before saying, I wish you were my type. It's an interesting moment because Fleabag has been trying to avoid sex and has been sort of like guarding herself in that way. She says, go back to the party and find someone to actually do that with. And she says, I want to do it with you. And Belinda says, no. And she says, why? Honestly, I can't be asked, darling. I'm going to go back to my room and have one more martini. And if you need anything, call me. It's an interesting moment where I kind of liked this actually because it would be really easy to make her way too grateful that this young hot woman is hitting on her and for her to grasp at that and it feel like a desperation. But instead, she's still in control of the situation. She's freely venting about how, like, she's frustrated by certain things. But Fleabag isn't just like this default consolation prize, you know? She's just like, no, I don't think so. You go have fun, but not me, not tonight, you know? And I sort of liked it. It was a little awkward for Fleabag, like, watching her, because I think she felt pretty rejected. But I don't think it was intended that way, you know? I think she realized that she was maybe reacting to a fear in that moment. Because we know that was how the last season ended, was with her talking about how she is so afraid of the day when nobody wants to fuck her. And the reaction to this woman talking about how she isn't getting flirted with anymore, it feels like, you know, directly correlated to that. So I don't think she necessarily even wants this woman. I think it's just like her trying to reassure somebody who is having the fallout of those same fears in front of her face. And she's like, wants to validate herself and the other woman at the same time. So she gets her stuff together and Fleabag says, 33 isn't exactly, and she goes, what had Jesus done by 33? Died. Exactly. So get out there and flirt. She goes back, and this is when she has the confrontation. I am funny. I am interesting. I knew I shouldn't have brought you here. You just think you can do whatever you like, say whatever you like, steal whatever you like, kiss whoever you like. And she says, he kissed me. Oh, I know. You know? Then why are we spending this entire... Because you're fine. You'll always be fine. You'll always be interesting. With your quirky cafe and your dead best friend. You just make me feel like I've failed. And she looks around and starts to say, Claire, if you mention the size of my office, I will scream. But she's making it like it's a good point. So from here, she goes to the priest who had been asleep. And here comes the best conversation, you guys. I am so delighted because they just decide that they're going to fucking talk about this like head on. First of all, Pam lives here. Why? What? Why? Why, though? Pam? Why do you live there? What are you doing, girl? Okay. Okay. Second of all, I found out that Pam becomes one of the doctors. Spoilers. Oh, that's wild. Like, really? How's that? Just putting it out there. And thirdly, they wind up having to go outside. At first, they're talking for a little while inside, but they have to keep it down. And she's talking about all of the, you know, the inconsistencies and the things that like don't make sense in what he highlighted for her in the Bible. And he says that, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's not fact, it's poetry. It's moral code interpretation for us to figure out God's plan for us. And she asks, what do you think God's plan is for you? I believe God meant for me to love people in a different way. I believe I'm supposed to love people as a father. And she says something like, we can arrange that. And I was like, girl. So this is when Pam makes a noise. They go outside and he says something like, you're good for me. You make me question my faith. And I've never felt closer to God. So all of a sudden, there's this moment where he thinks he saw a fox. And this is such a weird thing that I am delighted by. It makes no sense, but I really enjoy it. He talks about how he was on the toilet in the train and there was a fox that tried to get through a window of a train. Its face was in the window. Once when I was at a monastery, I woke up feeling a bit weird and like there might be a fox about, and a fox was sitting underneath my window looking at me like this, pointing at me like, you, we're watching you, we're having you. And then by the end of this scene, it ends with it looking like they both spotted a fox and like jumping to their feet, which is the perfect way to end the episode. But before that, he sits down and she's like, are you okay? And he says, do you think I'm mad? And she says, because of the fox thing or because of the God thing? Which was a pretty good response. And she asks him, do you ever have doubts? And he says, of course, every day. And she says, I don't think I could do it, especially being celibate. And when she says this, he starts to reply to her. He's sitting pretty close to her, but when he starts to reply, he jumps up because he thinks he saw a fox. And when he sits back down again, I could swear he sits a little bit closer to her than he was before. And I couldn't tell if that was my imagination. I'm watching it right now, and I still can't tell. I think that he did, but it's hard to tell. But I'm going to say that he did. So she says, I couldn't give up sex forever. It's just too... And he says, celibacy is a lot less complicated than romantic relationships, which I am certain is true, mostly. What if you meet someone you like? I talk and drink and laugh and give them Bibles and hope they eventually leave me alone. Yo! The way he says this and then like slowly turns and looks at her. Y'all, I would have fallen over. I love watching flirting on television that is like working. There's nothing worse than flirting between characters who don't have any chemistry. It is tedious. It is so excruciating. But when it works, you can feel it like you were just being flirted with. Your face gets red. You're just like, oh my God, did he just say that? I had this when I was watching, tiny spoilers for Falcon and Winter Soldier, but there is a point at which Bucky looks at Sam's sister and is like, hey, I'm Bucky, and gives her this smile. And I was like, oh my God, I like felt it. I felt the smile like a spear through the fucking solar plexus. And she just like kind of smiles and like walks away. And I was like, ooh, she felt that too. Shit. Like, oh, it's the best. Good flirting is the best. It's just like nothing like it. And he is, the fact that he is just acknowledging it, you know, he's just like, look, and she keeps pushing and says, what if you meet someone you love? And he just says, we're not going to have sex. I know that's what you think you want from me, but it's not. It won't bring any good. And she starts to laugh and joke and say, well, it might. And he says, it won't. I've been there many times before I found this. Many, many times. And she asks, how many times? And he looks at her and just says, many. In a way that, like, it makes her stop and swallow and look at the camera. And I was just like, word? Yeah, but like, how many though? Like, approximately how many? I just a bitch wants to know, that's all. Just tell me. I just want to know for my own reasons, please. I have to imagine it was a lot. And there's a way that he says it that makes me think it was men and women. And I don't know if that's just like me just assigning shit, but I'm like, yeah, he was fucking everybody. Like, I got the vibe. Oh, I love this moment so much. So she raises her eyebrows at this point in the way that she does. And he says, I'd really like to be your friend, though. And she says, I'd like to be your friend, too. And she turns and looks at the camera and says, we'll last a week. And he goes, what was that? Oh, my God, you guys, when he realized what they were doing, he can see the moment. Not that she's looking at the camera, but that she is somewhere else for a second. And he's like, what's up? What was that you just did? This is such a clever way of doing this. Have you guys, if you have met somebody who really like sees you and understands you, this kind of moment will happen and it is jarring, where you have a way of like coping with shit, putting off something, or like skirting an issue, and the person that like has gotten to and sort of zeroes in and they're like, what the fuck was that? And you're just like, what was what? What? Oh my God. And you're like suddenly realizing I'm in a relationship with a person who pays attention and knows me. Oh no. Like it's this sudden, you feel gratified on the one hand and really seen, which is like refreshing and amazing. And on the other hand, you're like, oh God, I can't hide. What do I do? Where do I go? Oh God. Like just this panic reaction. Or maybe that's just me because I hate being vulnerable. I don't know. But I feel like a lot of people have this, right? Like it's not just me. I loved this so much. And she does it again, where she looks at the camera for a split second And he's like, see, right there. You just went somewhere. What was that? And before they can like actually acknowledge it, they get attacked by a fox. And that's the end of the episode. And it's such a good ending, you guys. It's so good. I fucking love this so much. It's so good. When his back is sort of turned and she looks at the camera like, what the fuck? Oh my God. I loved it so much. So good. You guys, there is not another Fleabag episode until May 25th, almost a month. And it's a live watch. So I can't even watch the next episode right now. I have to wait a month to watch the next episode. I'm going to die. I'm so mad about it. So that's where we're at. So good, you guys. I can't believe I can talk for an hour and change. I'm over time on a 25-minute show. Ridiculous. My fucking Facebook cover image is David Tennant. I think it's still from Good Omens, saying, I would love to be mysterious, but unfortunately I never shut the fuck up. And that is a fucking mood, kids. All right, guys. We'll see you all in a month. Don't yell at me. Yell at God. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.